I love to put surveys in my shows sometimes, like where people can click a link in the description and answer questions. Or when I post about the podcast on social, I tell them, hey, go and fill out this survey. And that's where people will tell you, these are the products that I use. This is a service that I use. This is the software. As far as with you, if they're, they own multiple practices, there's probably some software that they use that they love.
Yeah.
Right. It could be something that they use for hiring. It could be something used for payroll.
Okay.
Right.
Now we get that information. So they love A, B, and C, right? Whatever the A, B, and C is. And then what do I do from there?
And then once you have those companies listed, it'll be about 5. You go and connect with those companies and you start building a relationship with them. So then you can be sponsored by them, hopefully in the long term. But if not in the beginning, start off as an affiliate, just promoting them in exchange for a small commission when people use their software or buy their product. And what this is doing is it helps you build more relevance in the industry. For example, as a podcaster, I help you monetize, right? But I have maybe 20 different companies I work with in terms of software and hardware.
Yeah.
So I can help you with hosting. I can help you with the microphone, with cameras, with everything. Right. So now if you listen to my show and you hear me talk about or recommend these different products and services that you know you need, you have more trust in me because I know the other tools that you need.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not selling them, I know what you need and what you care about.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it too, because sometimes people feel like, okay, the affiliate is kind of slimy, and it doesn't have to be that way. If you go to, I like what you recommended there, like going and figuring out what people like. It's like doing it the opposite way, right? Not going out and saying, who wants to sponsor my show? Going and saying, what do you guys like? Oh, you guys all like that? Okay, great. I'm going to try to bring them in as sponsors. And then on the early stages, so if someone has 300 views or downloads or whatever, or 500, like what kind of money are you talking about there? Will people actually sponsor there? Is it more at affiliate level at those amount of viewership?
This is the thing. I've done both across multiple industries for health podcasts and tech and even relationship podcasts. Like you can get sponsored really, really, really early. I mean, before you put an episode out, it all comes down to the relationships that you have with the company. That's why I'm a firm believer in finding a company, connect with them on LinkedIn. You need to know who the owner is.
So give me some numbers, like give me some, not for like you, but like give me like some ranges that people can expect. Is it hundreds of dollars a month? Is it thousands of dollars a month?
So for industries that are more in the entertainment space, it's going to be thousands early on, right? Because it's harder to find good podcasts that create relevant content that are consistent. So if you're doing music, movies, TV shows, pop culture, it's going to be thousands. On the business side, it's going to be hundreds in the beginning because there are a lot of business podcasts now, like marketing and all of that stuff. But when you niche down and you're in a specific industry like tech, or like a lot of religious podcasts, if you're talking about Christianity, like the numbers can go through the roof. So when you niche down, you actually make more. And by thousands,
like how many sponsors can a company, like a newer show like mine, how many, and that's a niche down, like are you talking about 5 sponsors? Can you get 3? Do you get 3 sponsors? Like how do you do that?
You can get between 3 and 5, really. And I say you never want to go more than 5 because you have to plan it out in terms of your content. You don't want the content to be diluted with too many ads. So between 3 and 5, and I would say in the first 6 months, you want to keep it at 1 and 2, right? So you really build your brand. You continue to grow the show and everything. After 6 months is when your show is going to obviously have grown a lot more. That's when things can take off. But in the early stages, I always encourage people to kind of go slower and kind of, get your feet wet a little bit and learn how things work and all of that, figure out the process. Then you'll be ready.
So do you recommend like, I love this, by the way, you're like helping me learn. And I know this is going to help other people really think through this process. So do you recommend people do like the ads, kind of like the Graham Stephan coffee hour show where he like literally cuts away and he's like, here, I'm selling you this thing. Like, you guys should go buy it, or that kind of ad? Or are you talking more like product placement, where it's like, hey, I just want to bring this up. I've been using this product and it's amazing. In the conversation, is there something in between, or do you do both? What are your like expert opinions on that?
What's funny is you will have to do both depending on the companies that you work with. So when you work with smaller brands, you probably had to come up with your own script and run it by them. You probably will have to do it where it's, product placement, where you just mention it throughout the show a couple times. And I encourage people to do product placement when they're only an affiliate. But when you're sponsored with bigger brands, they'll send you a full script, word
Yeah,
for
yeah.
word, what you have to say.
Yeah.
They'll send you a
Don't say these
timestamp.
things. They'll tell you what not to say.
Yes, yes, and they have people that do air checks that come back and make sure you did it properly. The process is more strict and strenuous when you're working with the bigger brands. But I think one thing that you have to do too is kind of prepare for that and like practice it so that you sound good, because brands
Oh,
really
yeah.
appreciate that. It
Yeah.
seems insignificant, but they love when you can do a live read and you're like on point and they can tell that you practice it. Like I practice live reads
Yeah.
so that it always sounds perfect. And companies literally reach out to me and say, wow, you did an amazing job. Let's work together again.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because if I said, hey, I'm going to put you on stage and you need to talk for 2 hours about podcasting, you could totally do that without a script. If you put me on a stage and said, talk about marketing or talk about dental marketing, I could do that all day long. I do not need a script, and it's going to feel very natural, but that's because I do it all the time. I don't read scripts on selling stuff. And so you really need to nail that down. And that's something I hate doing those, to be honest with you. That's like even the front end of my podcast. My project manager is like, Gary, if you need to film the front ends of your podcast, we'll get more viewers. And they told, all the experts say that you need to do it. And I'm like, I hate doing it because it always sounds so corny of me trying to get the name right and all that kind of stuff. So like hire that out. I that's something that I have a hang up around, but I love that piece of advice. So then from there, if you can get a couple people to come in, monetize the platform, what are your thoughts on people who use podcast as more of like a media center piece, meaning they don't charge you to come on the podcast, but I've seen people do this, and I've been on shows like this where it's like, hey, I want to be a sponsor of your event or your thing. And they're like, part of that sponsorship that you're buying for your company, you're also going to get a podcast show as well. And they kind of work it in that way. And so it's actually generating revenue from that standpoint. What are your thoughts on that side of it?
I think that's smart. I think more podcasters should monetize in that way, in terms of, I don't think you should charge your guests to be on the show, because there's a lot of legal parts about that are like different and tricky. I work with a podcast lawyer, Gordon Firemark, amazing, the best podcast lawyer in the world. And he explained, we talk about this all the time. There's a lot that goes into when you charge somebody to be on the show. But what you can do is charge somebody for promotion to be on the show. Yeah. So if they want to come on the show and promote their book or their product or something, you can charge them for that. And if they want you to promote to your mailing list on social media, most podcasters should be charging for that, because you put a lot of work into that stuff. So that's a way you could monetize as well. I don't think it's something to lean on long term. I think it's something that should be there as a barrier to separate you from the people that just reach out just give a podcast. Because once you have a podcast, people will reach out to you every day. I get 5 emails a day to be on my show. Yeah, and it's absurd. It's most of the time, truthfully, it's from people that just don't qualify yet, to be honest.
Yeah. I get that all the time too. People I'm like, hey, do you know anybody I should put on my show? And I get people on the thing that like doesn't have a bio picture on their Facebook page. You know what I mean? They're like, I want to be on, and I'm like, I don't know how that would work. Have you ever been on a podcast before? Nope. And I'm like, okay, no, it's
so if they don't have, I think having that barrier of charging for promotion really gets the scammers and the selfish people out of there, because they think, wow, well, I have to pay for this.